What should we talk about tonight?
Well, I was really appreciating the conference call at the beginning of the month.
Uh-huh.
And is there anything that you could kind of dovetail off on that?
Perhaps. What was I talking about? What were we talking about?
Asking me. If you could remember. I just really missed that. I very much appreciated it. Oh, wow.
I'd like to talk about staying in awareness.
Good. The whole trick to staying in awareness is to discover you always do. And it can seem that that's not the case. It can seem that you're not staying in awareness, but that's because you have some definition of some quality of awareness that you're thinking of as being awareness, and some other quality of awareness you're thinking of lesser awareness. What awareness really means is the presence of experience. If experience is present, that's awareness. Awareness doesn't mean being clear, or not being fuzzy, or being, attentive or not being attentive. Any form of presence of experience is awareness, and clear awareness, however you may define that, is absolutely no better or worse than muddy, murky, what you might call lack of awareness. It's chasing your tail, and it's missing the point to be trying to play a game of having clearer awareness, or more sharper awareness, or more focused awareness. The true awareness to notice, the powerful awareness, is just the presence of experience. Experience couldn't be present. You wouldn't be experiencing if there wasn't awareness of it. And that fundamental awareness is the awareness that matters. And it shows up in any guise whatsoever. It can even show up as basically complete unawareness. You can be under general anesthesia and essentially be what your waking mind would consider completely, entirely shut down, unaware, and yet that is a mode of awareness, because it's not non-existent.
I was thinking of awareness without interpretation.
You're always in awareness without interpretation, and if interpretation is present, that interpretation is present without interpretation. The trick is to. It's always the case that there's no interpretation. The trick is to notice that fact, not to try and attain some state and remain in it.
Well,
I mean, that's why I often talk about go to some portion of your experience where it has absolutely no meaning, minimized meaning for you. Like there's some corner of the sky out the window, or some bit of dirt on the floor or something. And there's not a whole lot of interpretation there. I mean, there's some. You can say, oh yeah, it's dirt on the floor. But basically it's pretty, and yet it's very present. It's as present as something you have tons of interpretation about. It's not any less present, and yet it's present just as a, sort of raw sensory data more.
What about the space-like presence of being?
Sure, what about it? Check it out.
Well, being in that space without getting caught up in mind and thoughts, and then associative thought, but just maintaining yourself, just being in that open space.
Right.
I mean, is that another tail chasing, or is that a way of breaking patterns of being in?
No, all these different ways of reorienting in your experience are useful, but not because they're goals in themselves, but because they are. It's like think of yourself as a scientist doing experiments. So you're doing experiments with experience. And you do this experiment, and you do that experiment, and you do this experiment. The point of the experiments is to discover something. And what you're wanting to discover is what this is. What is this? It's here. What are you? What's going on here? And what's going on here is going on in every experiential context. It's the same thing. So placing yourself in these different experiential contexts gives you a fresh triangulation on finding what's the same. What's the same? So when you go to space, like, what's that like when you're, what's the same about that is when you're lost in an emotional reactivity to someone that's pissing you off, or when you're sound asleep, or when you're having general anesthetic. What's the same? What's the common denominator there? That's what's important. But none of these states have any, no state is superior or inferior to any other state.
But that thing that is present in all of those states,
right,
is not that dominant. I mean, it's not that observable.
Well, it is, actually. It's just subtle. It's very observable once you see what it is. The trick is to discover it.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems as if it isn't the way it is after you discover it. Once you discover it, it becomes dominant. It becomes...
No, it's just as dominant as it ever was. You just don't notice that it's dominant.
But how can you miss it? I mean, how could you miss something that...
distraction is how. It's very simple. That you miss it by distraction. The important event is experience. The presence of experience, the presence of experiencing. But we typically get so distracted by what seems to be happening in experience that we just take experience for granted. It's just, well, of course it's an experience, but what's going on? What's happening? What do you get excited about? What matters? And it turns out it's exactly the opposite. It's entirely asked backwards. What seems to be going on in experience is of no importance whatsoever. The importance is the fact that experience is, the presence of experience. Experience itself is what's interesting. And here it is. It's not hidden.
That seems to have a presence all of its own.
It certainly does.
And, I mean, that's what I was
trying to get at. It's more than a presence all its own. Any and all presence of anything is its presence. It's not a separate, it's not like it's a separate presence over here and everything else is a presence over here and you need to separate it out. It's more that, you see me, the presence I seem to have is its presence. The presence your thoughts seem to have is its presence. The presence the feeling of your body seems to have is its presence. The presence of background consciousness or whatever seems to be is its presence. It's protein. It can look like anything, but it is always itself. And so the trick is to don't let yourself be fooled by what it looks like. Don't let yourself be distracted by what it looks like. And be with the thing itself.
It always has content.
It always has content, but the content is it. It's not like the content is in the way of it. The content is it. It presents as content. It's the forest and the trees. It is the forest, and there's always trees. But the trees aren't in the way of the forest. The trees are the forest. So the content is experience. Experience always has content. And the content can seem to be almost nothing. If you're in deep sleep or you're general anesthesia or you're dead or something, the content can seem to be basically zero, but it's never actually zero. Because the presence of nothingness is a presence. Nothingness is something. True nothing wouldn't even be nothing. So the trick is to feel the actuality of experience and find a common denominator that everything, that all experience is the same. You know, when you see something, when you see a sight, when you feel a thought being present, you know, when you feel a sensation, when you hear a sound, when you have some subtle vibe or some mood or some emotion, find out that the way in which they're all the same. What are they all made of? How are they here? How are they present? And it's not that what you're looking for is a too subtle tiny thread hidden behind all of this incredible stuff. On the contrary, it's too big. It's what all of this is. It's like the blind man and the elephant. You know, the elephant is like a rope and like a tree and like a wall and like a snake and like a branch. But the elephant actually is like that, but it's more than that. It's not less than that. It's more than that. So what is reality like? Well, it's like light, it's like sound, it's like thought, it's like sensation, it's like presence, it's like nothingness, it's like all of that. And it is that which is all of that and more. It's not limited to being those things. Those things don't make it up, but those things are its presentation, its interface. So the whole point is to look at experience itself, not the content. But experience is not behind the content. The content is experience, but experience is bigger than the content. You know what I mean? Experience is what the content is, and not as the sum of the parts of the content, but as the, you know, it's like a movie is light. It's not as the sum of the parts of the characters and scenes you're seeing on the screen, because there's no parts there. They seem to be parts, but they aren't really parts. All it is a field of light. And likewise here, all this is a field of radiant presence, is what I call it. Which is, it's analogous to the light in the movie, right? The movie is just light, or light and sound, let's say, right? But there's nothing else there, right? You can watch a horror movie, or a beautiful movie, or an artsy movie, or a really stupid, horrible infomercial, and it's all just it's the same light and the same sound. There's no difference whatsoever than what's really there. You know, but the imagination goes to assessing, judging, and giving it value judgments and this and that. And likewise, your experience is always the same. What's present in experience is always exactly the same. It's always exactly full of radiance, full of qualities. But it always looks different. And the distracting factor is getting distracted by giving validity to the seeming content as if it had independent existence. Just like in a movie, you get sucked into the movie, and all of a sudden you're getting all involved in the characters and the scenes and the situation. There's no characters, there's no scenes, there's no situations. It's just a pattern of light, right? I mean, could you sit at a movie? Could you sit through a whole 2-hour movie and just be looking at light on a screen and completely ignoring all the, you know, the people and the stuff that seems to be going on? But you don't need to, because when you're seeing the people and the stuff, you're seeing the light. They're one and the same. There's no either or there. There's no dichotomy. So when you see the events of your experience, you're actually seeing radiance, and nothing but. That is presenting as those events, but those events aren't actually events. They're just shapes and patterns in the radiance. I mean, concretely, right here, that's what this is.
Being one with that is distinct from a subject-object awareness of that.
You can't not be one with it. You can pretend that you're not one with it, but even that pretense is itself it. This is insanity. You can sit in the movie theater and pretend you can believe you could walk up into the screen and start interacting with the actors. Right? You can believe that, but you can't. It's not really that way. You're always just sitting looking at a pattern of light. Right now, you're always just sitting looking at a pattern of radiance. That's all that's happening here. You alone in infinity looking at a pattern of radiance that looks like the events of your life, of your experience. That's all that's happening. You're like alone in a dark theater. I mean, you're not a human being, of course. You're not in a body. But you are alone looking at a pattern of radiance. That's all that's happening here. It's all that's ever been happening. And notice that when you notice that's the case, you see, oh, duh. It's not even news. I mean, we've always known that. Here you are looking at your experience, right? I mean, there's no one else around here, is there? There's no one else looking at the show you're watching, right? Michael, are you...
If think of something, let me know.
That's okay. It's an ongoing discussion.
Oh, all right. All right.
Nicely put.
I remember reading in one of Shonka's books, he said, as one practices this path, one begins to notice an energy that is not the energy of the ego, and that is just sort of there.
Mm-hmm.
All radiance, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It seems the ability to, the capacity to notice that, just looking at my own situation, is definitely impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And those obstacles or obscurations, I didn't, the book that I shared with you,
Mm-hmm.
in the tantric model, it described a progressively more and more subtle clearing, going to more subtle layers of consciousness in which the lack of resistance can be more, lack of inherent existence or emptiness of things becomes more discernible.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I really struggle because you're giving a very direct, very Maha Adi. You're giving the most direct pointing to radiance that I think it can possibly be communicated. I just wonder, again, if I'm really qualified for that. If I'm de-essing myself, even, like attempting to. I can come here. There's that energetic resonance, your presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's very beautiful. Most of the rest of the time, I'm just completely.
Mm-hmm.
In the tantric terminology, the energy winds or whatever won't stay in the heart. It goes every other thing.
Sure. Well, it's not too important because if you can sense that what this is about to any degree whatsoever, then that's huge. That's a presence in your life. It's a presence in your reality. And that presence in your life will be active. That presence in your life will be powerful. Not necessarily on the surface, not necessarily explicitly, because all of this works behind the scenes. It works implicitly. It works under the table, so to speak. So it's not a matter of what you're doing or even what seems to be happening consciously or, let's say on the surface of your experience. But the fact that you recognize anything here, the fact that you can read Longchenpa and recognize that there's something there, even if it's not clear to you or whatever, it doesn't matter. The fact that you know there's something there, the fact that you feel that there's something there, that's very, very powerful. And you don't need to do anything with it. The fact that you recognize that, it does the work. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand that that's what your experience seems to be like. But you needn't worry about that at all, because it really doesn't matter. That may be hard to understand, because I understand you perhaps would like to be doing something about it, or engaging in it, or sort of, chipping away at it, or practicing something that feels like, more explicitly like it's, effective. But, it really, in actual fact, it really doesn't matter at all. The fact that you recognize this at all, as you do, however much that is very powerful. And you needn't underestimate that. And even if you do underestimate, it doesn't matter, it's powerful anyway. And that's a part of your reality, that's a part of your your being. It's intrinsic. Once that recognition is there, which it has been, and it continues to be, as you said, perhaps from time to time, when you look at Longchenpa or you come up here or whatever, that's a part of you, and that part of you is doing what it needs to do. It's working from the inside, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the path looks like. The path always looks like delusion. The path to realization looks like delusion. Always. It can't not.
One was one of those guys I was telling you about. The junior Rinpoche on the section at that time. I guess he's now leading that sangha. I haven't seen it for a while, but over a year ago or so, when I met him, I think the first time, and I said I'm like an aspiring Dzogchen yogi or something like that, looking into the mind. And he just said, that's BS. He said, don't BS me. Or something like that. It was very discouraging. So, that's the other side of it. I don't know what the karma of this. I have a sort of intuitive sense of the karma of this mind stream, and it's not pretty. But it's like I could. The sense of urgency, the sense that one can go through lifetimes of distraction, and I've spent a lot of this lifetime distracted, and not meet up with the Dharma, and just wander meaninglessly through different experiences. That's really scary. I don't, would rather not do that.
But, well, there's very simple, easy things you can do. Tear a page out of the Longchenpa book that is valuable. Just tear the page out, fold it up, and always keep it in your pocket. And don't even remember that it's in your pocket. Don't even take it out and look at it, except whenever you feel like it. Just take it out and glance at it and go, wow, whatever, and put it away. Just do something like that. And just as it's like having a pebble in your shoe. It's not like you need to do. You don't need to change anything. Just feel that presence in your experience, and that presence will serve as a beacon that is just a reminder. It's just a little reminder. And again, it's not like it needs to do anything. It just needs to be there. It's like a foghorn or something that's just going on in the background. You don't even need to pay attention to it, but every now and then you'll hear it and you go, yeah, that's there. But what I'm telling you is that's already the case just because you've recognized this stuff. But if you want something a little more explicit, try something like that. Just carry around a page. And just when you change your clothes, just take it out and put it, whatever the new clothes is, put it in the new pocket again, and just carry it around with you. Don't even think about it. Don't even take it out. Don't worry about it. And every now and then you'll take it out and you'll just look at it. And it's not about what you do with it. It's not like you need to engage with it or be productive with it or affect some change with it. Just that it's there is sufficient, because it has the power. It's doing all this. It's what's doing your karma. It's not the other way around. It's not like your karma is blocking you from reality. Reality is doing your karma. Reality is what your karma is made of. Reality is the cause of it all. And interpreting it as a problem is a true delusion, not the problems themselves.
I can sort of sense that the power of imagination, the power of...
Yeah, but that is it. What do you think is doing your imagination? Where does that come from? What's the imagination made of?
The so-called objects of experience. Yeah. Those exist as images.
Sure.
The action of the mind, the activity of the mind.
Yeah.
And that in Korean Zen, they describe something called a lacquer barrel. Practitioners engage with the process of meditation a certain impressment over the mind that begins to break up, and then it can really move at that point. And so I'm just kind of waiting for that to happen.
Yes. No, thank you. But you see, that's that whole approach is a recipe for confusion. So the very engaging with it on that level is inviting more confusion. It's like throwing gasoline on the confusion fire.
You're positing of some future.
The future that is afflictions. The afflictions are pure radiance, and treating them as afflictions, and then that they need to be solved, and then that you're waiting for that to happen, and then that you're hoping it to happen, and then that it's not happening, and so you get depressed, and the whole thing. It's all, Dzogchen looks at that and says, that's what is the problem. Is all of that entire chain of logic is the problem. The problem isn't the obscurations. The problem is thinking that the obscurations are obscurations, as opposed to seeing them as energy.
It's somewhat doable to engage it like that, to approach it like that in your company is somewhat doable. Not perfectly, but really brought that. But on my own,
but see, it's not important. It's not important. The fact that you grok it, that alone is huge. Okay, that's, and I realize that it may be, what's the word, dejecting or not, sort of encourage pessimism because it may seem to go away and you may seem to lose it. But don't worry about that. There's no basis for pessimism because that's the nature. Because this stuff goes in deep. It doesn't sit on the surface. That's why it's powerful. That's why it's transformative. It transforms from the inside out, not from the outside in. Because from the inside out is more powerful because that's where it all comes from anyway. I mean, where did the imagination come from? Where did the afflictions come from? Where's all the thought energy come from? Where's all the winds, the chaotic winds come from? It comes from in. So that having that clarity in there, which it is, you wouldn't be any degree of recognition. You wouldn't even be in this room. You wouldn't be interested. The fact that you recognize that there's something here and you recognize what it is huge. And that means that is a force at your center, a force at your core, a force at what you are, that is working. The fact that you recognize it is the sign that it's working, is the proof. And that's very powerful. Most people do not even recognize it, let alone having the chaotic winds and the distractions and all that. They don't even recognize it.
I am, and having the opportunity to hang with you and have this pointed to again and again is wonderful. I'm trying not to approach it conceptually, but intuitively, as you suggested, whether or not I should just bail out and go to a retreat center. There's a Dzogchen center up in New York. Last time I checked, where theoretically I could afford to be there. The Temple Brothers, one of them. You heard of them? You heard of the Temple?
I know of them very loosely.
That's right. One of them passed on, but when I spoke to them last year, I described a little bit about, I mentioned, talked to one of the young Western teachers, and they seemed to be, if I went there and was in self-retreat, they would give me space. They wouldn't say you have to do mucho or anything like that. I'm just trying to hear if that's what I should do.
Well, you could look into that, But again, you're liable to be seducing yourself into more confusion the more you try to find means that will be productive. Because the very notion that you need to be productive reinforces the notion that you have problems that need to be solved. which is a fantasy.
Well, okay, relatively speaking.
No, but even relatively speaking, you know, there's only one important fact, and that is everything is made of transcendental energy. So your afflictions are made of transcendental energy. Your confusion and distraction is made of transcendental energy. So when there's distraction, then transcendental consciousness is distracted from transcendental clarity by transcendental energy, all of which is completely transcendental. So how can it be hurt? How can it can't lead, the transcendent can't lead the transcendent astray by being transcendent, regardless of what it looks like.
What I meant by waiting for the dissolution of a mental crust, you get to a point where there's a consistent ability and an ability to do this what you're saying. It doesn't just go into a lock-up like two boxers who the referee has to come in, you know, sort of inner contractedness or whatever.
But even that is transcendental energy, and you already are this. This is you already are. You know, samsara consists of playing one state off against another. It consists of playing clarity off against confusion. It consists of playing, you know, centering off against confusion. And the problem isn't all these states. The problem is playing them off one against another. The states are not the issue. It's giving them a hierarchy and imagining that this is better than that. That's the problem. It's all the same. It's all, you know. You've probably read enough Dzogchen. You've heard of the island of gold. It's a nice image, a nice sort of a metaphor in Dzogchen. In Dzogchen, there's a mythical island of gold. On the island of gold, the dirt is made of gold. The plants are made of gold. The animals are made of gold. Everything is made of gold. So if everything is made of gold, it's all the same thing. How can there be any problems? Everything is made of gold. And this is meant to illustrate that, you know, all these different states. Confusion is made of gold. Let's change from gold to radiance. Confusion is made of radiance. Clarity is made of radiance. You know, distraction is made of radiance. One-pointed focus is made of radiance. You know, realization is made of radiance. So if it's all the same thing, it's like it's all gold. Why choose one over the other? The fantasy that it's different, that it's not all gold, is what causes the problem. Because then you deny, pointlessly and needlessly, and actually completely erroneously, that it's all the same. It's what we were talking about. Experience, all experience is the same thing. There's no hierarchy. You know, recognition, clarity is not better than unclarity. Noticing is not better than not noticing. Noticing is an experiment you can run to discover that fact, but noticing is not a superior condition. Noticing just helps you discover that noticing doesn't matter. And I understand, you know, I really understand that it can seem, you know, in the back of our minds we have this subliminal orientation. We have a sense of, well, you know, of this is wrong, this is not good, that must be better over there, and then we try and move from what we think of as not so good to what's better. And, you know, typically this is reflecting a lifelong orientation and lifelong habits, so it's quite understandable that it seems to have a lot of power. But the entire thing is a fable. It's just not really like that. And so you don't need to solve it by stopping doing it. You just need to solve it by seeing that it's a fable. When you see that everything is gold, when you see that everything is radiance, then this whole habit, the habit may actually persist, but it has no basis in fact. It's just a way of moving, and it doesn't even need to not persist because the habit itself is radiance.
Well, again, I want to get really specific because I value your input. When I was young, I had evidently some grateful, whatever you want to call it, and then as far as I think of it as far as the questions that have plagued me, that have been my Achilles heel, got going in really distracted, greatly obscuring the mind, and it's been a struggle ever since, to the point where in my career I just said, screw it, I don't care anymore. I obviously can't, I don't have the right karma or whatever to practice karma. I'm just going to be a schmuck and enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And I've gone through those types of cycles many, many times.
Sure.
And now, I've been on a roll, what I think of as a roll, for 2 years, and you were very instrumental. A friend, he drove up, I rode with him to see you in April of 2012, and I thought, and I had seen you before, and I thought, this is so powerful, why don't I take advantage of this as a real situation where I can receive pointers and guidance, and why not at least try, like a boxer who's been laid out flat, pick myself up and make the effort. But like my dreams at night, all of that stuff is still active. It's like on some level it's not being touched. And it's very discouraging.
Yeah, I understand. But again, looking for transformation is a mistake. It's an understanding of a mistake, and it's not a bad mistake, but it's a mistake. To back up a little bit, what you just said, it gives me great heart. When you say, screw it, I'm just going to be a schmuck and enjoy myself. That's the path. Do that. But do that because it truly doesn't matter. But it doesn't.
If I've done that, all it does is lead to tremendous pain. And, in 1999, I cried up for the government non-disability because I just felt so inwardly torn up.
Right, okay. So that's good. So that leads to pain, so you don't want to do it. Okay, that's fine, no problem. So you're doing what you're doing now, and that's fine. Exactly what you're doing is exactly right. Just like this. And don't expect results to look like what you expect them to. The real result is that you can recognize that there's something here. That's profound. That's really, don't belittle that. That's not just a little thing. That's not just the start of things. That's actually the finish of things. That's actually the finish line.
Now, the experience that I had in 1981, which sort of expecting it, but I don't even know what that was. Actually, Jack Cornfield said to me, I was at the center in Massachusetts, he said, you may have an experience at some point that will undermine a lot of the movement that you're having. I shared what I did. But it probably won't undermine all of it, but it'll definitely make a dent in it. And then one day I read some Zen, with Dr. John, but there's just this tacit sense like, well, I have not been born. What I am as consciousness of another planet did not come from anywhere. It just is. Sure. It was like no big deal. How could I ever thought otherwise? It just the whole sense of having to seek and strive. But that evidently being covered over, and Yeah, so,
But you have to understand, it's not really covered over. It looks like it's covered over. How to put this? Probably the clearest way to put it is trying to correct your karma just creates more karma. Or trying to correct your karma creates karma as a problem. Karma will go the way it goes, and it can go ways that could seem to be bizarre. And it will go ways that can seem to be bizarre. But it doesn't matter what it does. And thinking that it matters and trying to correct it actually is the problem. Not that it needs correction is not the problem. That you're trying to correct it's the problem. Maybe that's not so clear.
let me just give you the way that I've always thought of it. So I understand that the radiance is the context of the container or of nature of everything. Yes. I understand. I get that at least conceptually. But in order to approach it, I have to gain some relative. I have to tame the monkey mind.
No. You don't even need to approach it. The monkey mind is it. You don't need to approach it.
I have to temporarily be restrained from indulging in the gross afflictions.
Yes, but temporarily can be a second. Can be, Did you ever read Pacho Rinpoche's wonderful treatment of Dorje's 3 points?
No.
In it, he gives one practice. He gives one practice, which is the perfect Dzogchen practice, and that practice is you yell very loudly and very briefly. Yeah, just really loud, really briefly. And even if you know you're doing it, because you'll be doing it, it will produce a startlement. There will be, a second or a finite amount of time after that loud sound. Or you can set off a firecracker. I mean, it doesn't matter. Or you can, bang 2 boards together. It doesn't matter. Just any loud sensory, in terms of sound, a loud sensory input or anything like that. And immediately after that, for a period of time, there will be an opening. It's mechanical. It's not even something you need to, cultivate. It's purely mechanical. and that is a total Dzogchen practice right there. So you can have your complete distraction, complete absorption, complete habitual afflictions, and the whole deal just ongoing, and all of a sudden, bang! And just for that second, all of that's just nothing. It's just gone. It's just not there. And then it all comes back, no problem. But, so these openings are very easy. You don't need to you can produce it mechanically. You don't need to actually create some sort of a karmic alleviation of, somehow being free of your energy tendencies. And that's just as effective because again, ultimately, and not even ultimately, but in no sense is it important for the mind to not be active, the whole tantric fantasy of getting the winds under control into the central channel and all that is irrelevant, because the winds already are in the central channel, and there's no either or between being in the central channel and being all over the place. So it's just a matter of seeing the central channel, so to speak, in those terms, in terms of that metaphor. Seeing the central channel, and you see that that's the case, and that's there, and that is the case, and then you have access to it, and so you can go there anytime you want, so to speak. Not that you're actually going anywhere, but you're tuning in. It's like adjusting the dials of a radio station, like in a radio. Say all the stations are playing all at once, but you only hear one at a time, depending on how the thing's dialed. So likewise, your energies can just be all over the place doing whatever they're doing. But you can sort of change the dial momentarily and go to another station. And you can go to, these different energy conditions, because they all coexist. And you don't need to, that's the sort of tantric pretension of needing to control it, needing to manipulate it, needing to change it, needing to purify it. And Dzogchen says, screw it, it's pure. Why? You don't need to purify it, you just see that it's pure. And the way to see that it's pure is you just look at it. And you're already looking at it, so you just, it's like I was talking with Irma about. You do these experiments, just little experiments like that one. You do the yell, and this is a moment. You see that, but it's there. It's just open all of a sudden, and that's there. That's always there, even underneath all the distractions. That's actually there. It's like changing the radio, changing the focus of the radio station to that openness rather than the static, right? But that's always there. It's not an either or. They coexist. It's like different currents of the sea. It's like looking at, all the levels of the sea are simultaneously present. The surface waves are present, and then the currents underneath are present, and the deeper currents are present, and the very, very bottom of the sea where it's dark and still is present. All of them coexist instantaneously. It's just a matter of, you're not stuck on the surface or stuck anywhere. You're in the whole thing, so it's just a matter of sort of switching your attention and noticing these different levels. And once you know something's there, you don't need to stay with it all the time. You know it's there, and you are it, so you have it. And the radiance is like that. It's not like you need to, never be experiencing anything other than pure raw radiance. A field of clear light. You just need to see that is in fact the case. Even if you're experiencing it as monkey mind or whatever, because that's the radiance too. It really is, and at that point you don't care. You just don't care. It's not that the phenomena, the karmic patterns aren't there. It's not that the karmic phenomena aren't there, but there's no fighting with them. You don't care. You don't give a shit, because they're radiance. They really are radiance, and you see that that's the case once. It's not like you need to stay there and stay seeing it. No, I'm not seeing it now. No, just see it. See that it's the case, and once you know that it's the case, and then you just relax and kick back. It's Miller time. Who gives a shit?
What about that Trump also said about the red, not describing the tantric model, the red and the white drops, I guess they represent the male and the female, and eventually they reunite in the heart.
Sure. But again, it's not a historic thing. The union is just another strata of the sea, and the separation is another strata. So all these different modes coexist. It's not like, how can I put it? It's not like things need to move. One condition needs to move to another condition that will be superior. It's like any condition. This condition right here contains all conditions. You just need to look at the right level.
Well, in reading that, I sort of get the impression that would have to happen in order to experience a stable, non-dual.
No, because it doesn't. It's already happened. It's happening right here. So it's just a question of noticing that happens. You see what I mean? It's not an event in time or an event in history. It's a frequency. Let's call it a frequency. And when you tune into that frequency, you notice that, well, on that frequency, that's already the case, so you can go there. It's like meditation, Some people think to meditate you need to still the mind. You don't need to do that at all. Meditation is very, very easy. You just go to the portion of your mind that's already still. The rest of your mind can be churning away, but there's a portion of your mind that's just, and you just tune into that. And all of a sudden you're meditating without fighting with your mind or doing anything. You just go to where you're already meditating, and then you're meditating. You don't do it, you just see it. And these different energy conditions are exactly the same. They already are the case. They already happen. This right here is the primal union of Samantabhadra and Samantabhadra. This is it right here. If you tune into that level, it's very obvious. If you'd see that at other levels, it looks like distraction and karmic afflictions and all that. But they're one and the same, just with a different degree of focus. But it's literally the same event. So, and you don't even need to, it's not like you need to see that and then stay there. You just need to see that that's the case, and then you know that you can't depart from that. whatever it looks like, and then you can let yourself go and float freely through all these different apparent energy conditions, but they're all the same, they're just variations on a theme.
That's what real freedom would be, actually.
Yes, exactly so. Because you're not needing to maintain anything, you're not needing to cling to some purity or some, you just see that, you see the unassailable purity is the case, and that it applies across the board, and then you're free, because any state is the pure state. Delusion and affliction in our shitty lives is the radiance. It literally is, and again, you just need to see once that is the case, and then you know it and you feel it, and it's like, yeah, okay. And again, I want to reiterate, the fact that you have any recognition of this, which you do, or you wouldn't be here. You would pick up a Longchenpa book and say, "What's this gibberish?" You say, "What's this guy talking about? He's just going around in circles." I mean, that's what most people, if you looked at that book, that's what they would say. They would have absolutely no interest in it. But you pick it up and you go, "Oh my God, this is beautiful." The fact that you recognize that means that you have the ability to tune into that level, even if you haven't done it, let's say, with enough connection for it to, permeate. But the fact that you recognize that means that is in you, and the tuning is happening automatically. It's not something that you need to do. It's not a matter of deliberate action or a particular practice or your conscious intention or something. It's like it's like a seed that's in you, and that seed in your energy system will spread. It grows. It spreads its resonance, and it's already it's already happening. I mean, I can see it. You've changed quite a bit since I first started talking with you. You're a different person. You're looser. You're a little more. I couldn't characterize it in words in a lot of ways, but your whole energy system is mutating. But all of this stuff works, it works under the table. It doesn't work explicitly, so it's not necessarily obvious. It sort of works on the inside, and then all of a sudden it becomes noticeable after it's already done its work. Sure.
Just the way you describe it, it's like this is very multidimensional.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's say there are what we call ordinary circumstances that, let's say, I find myself in the midst of raging fight with my daughter for nothing.
Yeah.
I use some of my native language, like a couple of words, and I was attacked that I disrespect others who don't speak that language. And so I'm looking, it's like, are you real? So it's like so bizarre that you actually find beauty in it. It's like an insanely bizarre situation.
Sure.
And I'm seeing it as that dimension.
Yeah.
That dimension. It's that dimension.
No.
And it will never be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That dimension. And then, as you say, there is, when you tune into different dimension, dial, whatever,
yes.
It's a completely, just like
exactly. And this always coexists.
Galaxy.
And it always coexists. Every situation is infinite dimensions. Is like an axis that infinite dimensions are available on. And what it seems to be, what's happening, is not one thing, but it's a completely different thing in each of these different dimensions. And none of them is more or less true than any of the other ones. And people.
That takes a little finer to really see that there is no difference.
Yeah, but it's easy to see it a little bit, and seeing it a little bit, you can trip on it and explore it and see it more and more and more, and you prove it for yourself, because it's actually not hard to do. It's just a matter of of really like, wow, there's so many different ways at the same time.
Especially when something appears like very new,
Oh, yeah, sure. Then it's obvious.
Then it's like, wow, yeah. And then, as you say, to recognize that it's no different than any other dimension.
Yes, right.
That's the point.
Yeah, they all look very different, but there's no hierarchy. There's not like one is better or truer than another one. There's just infinitely different flavors of qualities that all intersect in real experience. So any experience is an infinite dimensions of different experience, just that are sort of they intersect just at this one, moment. Yeah. And it's actually not very hard to see that. I mean, we're not used to looking at it that way, most of us, because it's not the normal human way of functioning. I mean, it kind of is, but people don't acknowledge it, Yeah. But once you just look for yourself, it's very clear. I mean, I think it's very easy to get to. It's not even subtle. It's pretty obvious.
Well, like when people use psychedelic substances and experiences with that, that's not any more real than this.
No, that just makes it a little more obvious. The same thing's always going on. I mean, when you're tripping or something, there's just all these, you just sort of all these different aspects simultaneously happening, and none of them really fall into coherence. And all experiences like that, normal, straight waking experience is just the same thing. Dreams are the same thing. Everything is the same thing. Again, we sort of become numb, or we hit. It's a sort of a self-hypnosis of not noticing the slipperiness of normal waking experience, because we sort of lock it into, consistency of what's going on here. And we sort of close it down and simplify it. But if you're really with any experience, it's just all question marks. I mean, it's all like, wow, there's so many different partial aspects here, and they don't come together. Then you get a little loose, a little high or something, and that gets really obvious, and then you're just like, you can't censor it anymore. But that's always going on. The waking state is just a state where the censor is more predominant. And then drug experiences or any meditation or these various kinds of things all make push that envelope a little bit.
So there's not necessarily a need to get rid of the censor.
No, you don't need to. You don't know, the censor doesn't matter, but just see that it is censorship, so that you get that even if you're only experiencing things in a limited way, that doesn't mean they actually are limited, because you get an intuition of all the multidimensionality, even if you're not really focusing on it.
So this sort of reality can be experienced as vibrantly as that other sort of.
Of course, because it actually is being experienced that way, And again, it's easy to do little experiments where you look at your actual experience in the moment, and you'll notice, wow, it's slippery and it's moving and it's sort of vibrating, and I mean, it's just all of this stuff going on, and it's subtle. So ordinarily we don't pay much attention to it. We're sort of taking care of business or doing whatever we're doing, whatever we're in the situation to accomplish or participate in. But if you take a second just to look, you'll notice right away, wow, yeah, it's really slippery. There's a whole lot of subtlety going on here. And that's always, even if you're not consciously paying attention to it, it's always there. And if you do these little experiments every once in a while, it verifies that, and you just get that, wow, yeah, that's always there. And so then even if it's not like you need to always be in that mode. You can if you want to, and you can kind of train yourself. But it doesn't even matter, because once you get the sense that is the case, then you know it's that, even if you're taking care of business, even if you're kind of in a more focused sort of orientation. Because focus is not the opposite of unfocused. Focus takes place in the context of unfocused. It doesn't eliminate it. So whatever you're focused on, like even just sensorially, whatever you're focused on, everything else that you're not focused on is also present. It's just present in a vague way, and when you're focusing on it's present in a sharp way. But vagueness is not lessened. Vagueness, most of experience is all kinds of vague. Vague is and then you get all these little subtle, slippery things. They're little vaguenesses too, and so they're just kind of out of focus. They're just sort of just around the side of your around the side, just around the corner, so to speak, of whatever you're focusing on. And then so you get, it's not an easy focus and lack of focus, or sort of the censored mode of simplifying things versus the slippery multidimensionality. They're not mutually exclusive. They coexist. And that's always the case. It's just a matter of degrees. When you go to sleep, then there's virtually no censorship, and it's all slippery. And then but then you start dreaming, and it's slippery, but there can be some degree of censorship come on. Then you wake up, and that's probably the waking condition, maybe the most heavily censored condition of being able to sort of pull things into a simple storyline or whatever. But even that doesn't succeed completely, because again, it's like percentages.
Like when I hear you talk, it just feels like you have this real command and mastery over it. How am I wondering, like what's the difference between you and some Lama or Rinpoche? Do they have some special, exclusive, secret something?
Everyone's individual. So the fact that someone, if you could take 30 different Tibetan lamas, and the fact that they're all lamas are all of a certain acknowledged grade or whatever status doesn't mean they're all the same. They're all just individuals like you and I are individuals, and every individual has a different hit on things. And so some of them are really sharp. Some of them are a little less sharp. Some of them are a lot less sharp, maybe, right? But it's all just individuals. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. Everyone has their own personal sort of degree of where they are in their unfoldment of their pattern of things, whatever.
So there's nothing kind of exclusive or changing or something.
No, this is the nature of what everyone and everything is, and it's just a matter of realizing that's the case, and it's possible to do that. And it's true that it seems to be that these days it seems to be relatively rare to find individuals who have realized it with much depth. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of people who have. And the amount of depth or the degree to which they can manifest it. I mean, the depth of realization and the degree to which it can be manifested is kind of two different things too. Like it's kind of like musical talent. Like a person who has a lot of musical talent has the ability to really manifest a really explicit, display of music, make it accessible. Another person may have an equally deep appreciation of music, but not have a talent for manifesting it. So you wouldn't know it. They can't show it. They can't make it. They can't put on a show of it, make it available explicitly. And so that's just sort of a matter of individual nature.
What about people about like really extreme, like renunciation and vows of celibacy or whatever, or is there somehow knowing the absolute, so only in its non-form, is that somehow more higher or valuable than sort of this sort of relative form, experiencing through the relative form and engagement?
No. In my opinion, the highest realization is the one that is most inclusive. So it includes form. Because form, the thing about reality is every aspect of it is equally reality. So, sort of transcendental radiant nothingness is actually not superior to, crazy people wandering the streets yelling curses or whatever. It's literally all the same. And seeing that that's all the same is a very deep realization. It's easy to notice that specialness is special, but to notice that unspecialness is also special is actually demands a certain more maybe it's a high watermark of realization. But it's different, and a lot of this has to do with more with human patterns of behavior than anything else. There's lots and lots of spiritual traditions, as you no doubt know, that have relative degrees of focus and doing things a certain way, and you have to renounce, or you have to be a monk, or you have to this, or you have to that. And a lot of very well-meaning, intelligent people go into these things, and they can have very deep realizations in these contexts. But they're still in that context, so they may have some degree of a bias towards the sort of the party line or the view of the way they've been approaching it for a while. And so again, it sort of depends. Some people are more anarchistic in their nature, and other people are more, I don't know what, conservative or something in their nature. And it's not a value judgment so much as just sort of their flavor. So, and that can really very much change what it looks like, what the way they were presented would look. But it doesn't necessarily mean that what they're presenting is radically different.
So I think it seems like there's a condescending kind of attitude that if you're not held up to this kind of standard, then you're like a lesser spirituality or something. You're falling short of the ultimate goal or something.
No, but see, this is to look at spirituality in terms of an attainment that can be better and better, like a grade, like you can like a PhD and then another PhD and then whatever, right? It's like a hierarchy is a mistake, because it's not actually personal. It's not something that somebody attains and gains some special status by it. It's about the condition of what objectivity is. So it's not about an individual, it's about the objectivity. And so any degree of spiritual realization is realizing what that objectivity is. It's not that the person becomes special. They only sort of become special apparently to the extent that they realize the specialness of what the objectivity is. But it's the objectivity that's what's special, and everyone already is that. So a realized being is not in any way elevated above anyone else. They just happen to know it maybe more profoundly than another person might. So it's about, that's I like the word realization more than anything else, because it's about realizing what is the case, rather than about attaining some condition of superior or whatever. It's not individualized. It can look individualized because then the individual can present their understanding, whatever, to the degree they can. But what their understanding is about objectivity. So it's not. They're presenting what is here already for everyone, rather than something that's special to them. It may be special in the sense that they happen to notice it, but that doesn't make them special. It's just it's just a quirk of how it happened to work out for them. It's like a bunch of people in a room and there's a little peephole over there, and most people haven't noticed it, and one guy goes over and looks at the peephole and says, "Wow, there's this amazing stuff out there." He's not special, he just happened to look out the peephole. So it's kind of like that. It's like, well, I happen to, any person that has any realization just happens to look at this stuff and notice what it actually is, as opposed to people who haven't been looking at it because they haven't, for whatever reason, right, individually. So it's not a specialness about them so much as they just happen to notice what was there available to be noticed.
Can you talk more about the experience of objectivity?
Yeah, it's all about objectivity. It's all about what anything is. I think that the most challenging aspect of most spiritualities is approached very subjectively. It's all about me and my mind and what I'm thinking and what I'm doing and how pure or impure I am and all this sort of narcissistic stuff. But that's the most challenging, difficult, grotesque way to approach it. It's so much easier to go to something that's totally objective. Go to a chair sitting there, or the sun, or a cloud, or a rock, or anything, and see what it is. And when you find what that is, then you know what everything is, because what the rock is exactly the same thing as your emotions are and your purity and your thoughts and everything else, without getting into that whole narcissistic muck that we're so used to, getting caught up in.
There's a lot going on there.
And what do you mean?
The experience of subject
Yes.
seems to be centered in beliefs and sensation.
Right. Yes.
So those are very strong. They're very strong patterns.
Right.
And to experience self as an object, as any other object, and experience objectivity seems to consider everything you said at the last hour. Not having a goal, not having a process, not making a big deal of anything, but it still seems that there is a change in the experience from the subjectivity of sensation
Right.
and just like the presence of everything is objective.
Sure.
Yes, it is.
Sure, but it's not an actual change, it's just a noticing, because even when there's heavy subjectivity, the objective is also present. It's not an either or. It's a continuum. It's like a seesaw where one end is the subjectivity, but the other end is objectivity, and it's always, the whole seesaw is always there.
It's there, but your experience isn't subjective.
No, objectivity exists in your experience too, always. I mean, you could say technically objective experience is subjective because it's in your experience, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what your experience is, and the subjective pole of experience is the most confusing, murky aspect of it, whereas the objective pole is the clearest, simplest aspect, but it's the same thing. So for purposes of research, for purposes of investigation, do yourself a favor and look where it's easiest to look, rather than where it's hardest to look. I mean, you can go to your emotions and your thoughts and your beliefs and use that as your vehicle for meditation or noticing, but you're liable to be spun around like you're in a washing machine or something. But if you go to, the sun or a rock or something, it's just sitting there. It's so easy. It's so obliging. And there's you're bypassing all of that turmoil, but what's there is exactly the same thing as the turmoil is. So when you find out what's in the rock, you find out what's in the turmoil, and so it solves the whole problem. But you did it where it's easy rather than where it's hard.
So when you're looking at objects, when you're looking at objectivity, and you're looking at the presence.
Sure. Just the experience, just the actuality of what the experience of that is. Every experience is an experience, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for experience. And the experience of thoughts and emotions and beliefs and all the subjective muck is just experience, just like the experience of that chair sitting there is experience. But the chair is very obliging in being sort of just sitting there and not being particularly problematic or having in its implications,
It's interesting to see, to consider sight equal to sensation.
Sure. And you can do that too. I mean, you can do that by touching. You can look at the chair, see what the seeing of the chair is, and then you can look at your face in the mirror, which is the subjective pole of vision may be like looking at your face in a mirror. And then the objective pole in vision may be looking at just some object that you don't really care about, it's just sitting there. And when you look at your face in the mirror, all of a sudden it's like Pandora's box is open, and you're like, oh, I'm looking at myself, who am I, and all that stuff. But when you're looking at the chair, it's just a chair, who cares? Because all of that charge of narcissism and self-importance is just deflated, it's just not there. But in actuality, it's the same thing. So it's so much easier to look there. But then you can go to feeling. You can, okay, close your eyes. Feel the chair. Feel your face. And feel the chair, the sensation. But again, you're being with a more subjective pole and more object. Or maybe feel your genitals, or feel something that has some degree of importance or something as an experiential, versus something like just feeling a carpet or feeling the fabric of your pants or something. So every and any sense field will have a similar degree of subjectivity and objectivity available in it. And again, if you look at the more objective poles in any of these areas, it's much easier opportunity for noticing, just because you're bypassing all of that, subjective narcissism charge, right?
Sense of importance.
Exactly, importance.
So loaded.
Exactly. And this is what you're working with. You're working to discover that everything has equal importance. And so when you discover what is at the objective pole, which has minimal importance, it actually deflates the importance that the subjective pole seems to have, because you see it's the same. And then the presence of thought and emotion, all that's just an objective fact, just like the presence of this chair sitting here, or the sound of a car driving by or something. It's just an objective fact. It's just not particularly important. It's a fact, but it has no particular urgency. And the fact of a thought or an emotion or a sensation, likewise, is just a fact. And all of a sudden it loses all the, oh no, oh, this is terrible, what about this, or whatever. And all that just is like, it just gets deflated.
It's just data.
Yeah, it's just data. Exactly, it's just data. It's just vibes, it's just qualities. And all qualities are actually the same.
The rock is recently, for a few months now, so funny that you're talking about it. That's another dimension. I just started to relate to rocks, and big rock, boulder rock, and I go to my kind of like when the sun is setting, walk. There is this nice rock. I can sit down with it, and it has such powerful presence that it completely takes over, as if there is no you. It's just that presence, and it talks.
But any experience can be the same if you let it.
Yeah.
We find things that have some degree of, sort of. I don't know how to put it, but that we're in tune with to some degree, and then they seem to be special and have this presence. But in actuality, anything whatsoever, you can just take a scrap of paper on the floor or something and look at it, and it's the same thing. It's a whole symphony.
There is like a sameness of total intimacy.
Yes.
The sameness of
Yes.
the suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all the same. It's all one. It's all and
I got really inspired, and then I was I had the need, for whatever reason, to switch into another dimension, and that was it, the rock. That was perfect. Perfect antidote to confusion.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is. It is. You can go anywhere in your experience at any time, and nothing is mutually exclusive. So you can be lost in all kinds of turmoil of thought and arguing with yourself and being all emotional, And then all of a sudden you can just go to some place where it's just sort of open space in your experience. And that's right there too. And it's not like you need the one has to stop for the other. They're all right here. It's just like having so many different dimensions, and you can just travel to anyone you want.
Oh, you really beautiful illustration with all made of gold.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
Yeah, everything is the same. I mean, everything is literally. I mean, gold is a metaphor, but everything is literally made of the same thing without a metaphor. And what you can't say what that is, but I call it radiance. But everything, the substance of experience itself, is a living transcendental energy. Everything whatsoever is made of that. On every level of density, any level of experience whatsoever is made of this incredible, hyper-intelligent, divine, transcendental energy. So in India they call it Shaktis. All these different traditions have names for it. But the important thing is the thing itself, not all these names and myths and all that, because who cares about that?
And that's the true content.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the substance is the content, is the meaning, because it's not like we think of substance just inert. It's not inert. It's pure life force. It's pure intelligence. It's pure, meaningfulness.
Yeah, that's the switch, as if the free falling and the constant confusion, and nothing has answer, nothing to grab on, hold on to. This is exactly what was discovered, that you can lean on, back onto.
Sure.
Then one is held by it. One is it.
Yeah, because everything is that. When you can't find anything to hold on to, that is this.
It's this.
Yeah. So you can't leave it. You can't lose it. It's what everything is made of.
It's pure love.
Yeah, true. Pure love. True. Pure love, pure intelligence, pure light, pure divinity, pure life, everything.
Everything.
Is there a way we can realize that our nighttime dreams to help us to realize it?
Sure you can. But again, this depends on individual temperament. Some people are much... just a half would be great. Oh, thank you very much. Some people are, have more of an inclination to kind of lucid dream and all that. So again, I would say, for me, practically speaking, the overriding principle is to apply yourself wherever it's easy, wherever you seem to be able to get engagement, let's say, anywhere in your experience, and it will tend to trickle down to other parts of your experience. So some people, like I know one guy who's just a lucid dreamer. He lucid dreams all the time, and in that case, it's easy to use your dreams as a vehicle of exploration, because of course what dreams are and what you find in dreams is the same thing you find anywhere. So that's a great place to explore, and dreams have the advantage of a more explicit slipperiness than the waking condition. But that's not a real advantage, because the waking condition actually has the same slipperiness. It's just at a kind of a different frequency or something. I don't know. But at any rate, it's not important. It's a fallacy that, well, gosh, I'm getting good in the waking state. Now I have to take on the dream state, and then I have to take on the deep state. It's not like that. If you anywhere whatsoever that you have some insight in your experience will trickle across to all and spread to all of your experience. So you get some realization in the waking state, and it will show up in the dream states as well, and vice versa. But I'd say for most people, it's probably easier to apply in the waking state, if it is. In the waking state, you can come to a meeting like this, and all of a sudden this stuff is being affected. In the dream, you could too, if you do. And in the waking state, you could, if you do. But here you are, so...
Aren't there all the states here?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's just different dimensions. Again, it's just a matter of focus. The dream state is happening right here. You can go, what we call daydream or fantasy is actually the dream state. And it's always ongoing, sort of beneath the surface of the waking state, but typically the waking conditions are more dominantly in focus, so that portion of the experience is being less noticed. And deep sleep is here too. Right now you're in deep sleep. But again, typically we don't notice it because it's relatively uneventful compared to all the seeming circumstances and all that of the sensory experience. So that sort of seems to be front and center. But if you tune into it, you can just go, it's deep sleep. And you can be deeply asleep even when you're sitting here. It's actually very easy to do once you get the sense that you can do it. Or if you go to the dreaming level, it's very, very easy because, it's really just like looking at it. It's just as easy as shifting your gaze. Although you don't do it with you don't do it physically.
Is there some sort of ultimate dream with all this, or who's like setting up all the things?
Yeah, there is, but it's what you really are. You are the ultimate dreamer, but you are not you, the human being. The human being is just being dreamed, but who's dreaming it is the real you. Just like when the you that shows up in a dream when you're asleep at night isn't the real you, isn't the dreamer, even though it's sort of a representative of it or an avatar of it or something, whatever, right? But no, it's you. You are not this small being in this thing. You are actually the whole shebang, even as you are also. It's just like when you seem to be in a dream and you're a character in a dream with other characters, but you're also the dreamer. It's it's like that. You're kind of in two modes simultaneously, and of course in many modes more than that simultaneously because of the multidimensionality.
Well, it's pretty interesting how delusion has us, separated off. How consistent delusion appears to be, even though it really isn't.
Yeah, but it just gets down to it's like brainwashing. It's reinforcement. All day, every day, you're around people that are telling you that you're you and you're over there. Which is a lie. You're not you and you're not over there.
No, but even within ourselves, the delusion that we have to keep looking for the fallacy versus the truth.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's the delusion that I am the small self and that I'm pathetic and pitiful. And,
right. But again, we're up against a lifetime of brainwashing and reinforcement and paltry, percentage-wise, a paltry little sliver of experience that's anything to the contrary. So it's just kind of, it's just sort of the proportion of the stimulus. It's like a stimulus response. If 99.9% of your stimulus has a certain flavor, it's no wonder if you sort of find yourself tuned into that.
Well, and at the end of the day, that doesn't matter at all either.
Oh, no, of course not.
That is the same.
Exactly so.
It's just, salty instead of sweet or whatever.
Yeah, exactly so.
Getting to sort of glimpse that is quite a big.
Right, and that's doable. And again, it's easy to it's relatively when it becomes relatively easy to see beyond that, then it is relatively easy to do.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't until you're ready to, whatever that means.
Yeah.
It's always easy, but you don't know it's easy until you notice that it's easy, and then it's easy. Well, it's just about quitting time, so I will wish our online friends good night. Figure out how to turn this on.